This is 6.1, part 5. We are told that we need to factor by grouping. First thing I'm looking at to see if I have a GCF. Okay, do I have 7 won't divide into this one. A Z goes in here, here, but there's no Z here. And those are the only things that this can go into this is a 7 and a Z of some kind. So we don't have a GCF here. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I have a minus sign, plus sign right here. This needs to be a plus. And I told you we have 2 ways to work it, and I will work it both ways on this problem. The first way I'm going to work it is to change this to plus a negative. So I'm going to rewrite this as 7z squared plus 14z plus negative az minus 2a. Okay, so now that I've done that, I group the first 2 and then the second 2. And I ask myself, can I factor anything out of the first group? Well, both of these have a z, and 7 does divide into 14. So I'm going to factor out a 7. My smallest exponent is a 1, so 7z. Okay, and 7z, I need to multiply it by something to get 7z squared. That would be another z. Plus 7 times 2 gives me the 14, and this already is there. Okay, plus. Okay, so let's look at this one. Remember when we talked about GCF on the very first page of these notes? We said that you always have the option of factoring out a negative version. We might need to factor out a positive. We might need to factor out a negative. And our goal is to make sure that we match this. Okay? So I look at this and I have an A in both of them. Okay? So I'm either going to factor out A or I'm going to factor out negative A. If I factor an A out of this one, I get negative Z. This is a positive Z. If I factor an A out of this one, I get a negative 2. I have a positive 2 here. The signs would be wrong on both of them if I factor out a positive A. So I choose to factor out a negative A. Let's see what happens. Negative A needs to be multiplied by something to get negative AZ. So if I put a Z here, that works. Negative A times what gives me negative 2A? Well, if I multiply that by a positive 2, remember that's a negative 1. Negative 1 times 2 gives me the negative 2, and then I'll get the A back. Okay? Now, these two things do match. So I write it down once, Z plus 2, and then open a new set of parentheses and collapse these into this next set of parentheses. 7z plus negative a. I would accept this on a written exam, but we know that, mathematicians are lazy, so if we could write this using only one symbol, we would. So your better answer is z plus 2 times 7z minus a. Okay, so that's one way. This is changing plus to a negative. I said that backwards. Change the minus sign to plus a negative. Okay. Alternate way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange things. Now we know that since we can rearrange these additions, subtractions in any order we want to. What we want to do is I want to change up my groups. The easiest way to change up a group is to switch the order of the middle terms. That way, we have this one will be paired with this one will be paired with this one. And since this is a positive 14, it's always also going to give me a plus sign in the middle. So 7z squared minus az plus 14z minus 2a. Remember, every time you recopy, make sure you didn't make a stupid mistake. And I think I'm good. So I have the plus sign, which is good. Group. What can I factor out of this one? I have a z in both of them, and that's all I have. So factor out that z. Z times 7z will give me back the 7z squared. Minus, here I need an a. 7z minus a. 7z minus a, 7z minus a. I've got the same thing going on here. Plus, do not lose that plus sign. All right, look here. 14 and the 2, I can factor out a 2. 2 times 7z gives me back the 14z. And 2, if I factor out a 2 here, I get the minus a. These two are the same, so I write it down once. Times, collapse these, this z goes right here, and the plus 2 goes right here. And we have the same two binomials being multiplied, and it does not matter that they're in different orders. They are exactly the same thing. Now, most of the time, reordering is your easier option. Sometimes you just got an ugly problem and it's just not going to work. So you need to remember this method as well.